it's my great pleasure to be moderating today's session. This session, I'm very happy to see a full room because this session is on poetry, and I know it's a subset of literature and only a few true aficionados like this. I'm very, very excited to introduce today's panelists. We have two very strong voices from Indian poetry. I'm very happy to introduce Gopika and Rochelle. They have been writing for the past couple of decades. Today in focus are a couple of their books. The one by Rochelle is Coin in the River, and by Gopika is What Parvati Does Not Say. So these are very interesting collection of poems. We will, if we have time, we will also get to hear some of the poems. But before that, we are going to pick their brains and ask about various things related to poetry. So thank you for joining today's session. So just to get this ball rolling, Indian poetry is very, very rich, very vast. We have poetry going all the way back to 3,000 years. But like every other pursuit, it's a very male-dominated area. But having said that, we know that there have been poets, female poets, from the Vedic times, the Rishikas, the Buddhist nuns, the Bhakti movement poets who came from all walks of society, to Sarojini Naidu, to Kamala Das. So it has come through where women refused to be quietened and wrote very, very bold, paradigm-shifting poetry across the ages. So I'm very happy that there are more of poets in the same genre. Having said that, I just wanted to get your perspective on being women writing poetry on subjects that range from very personal to social. How is it easy to get your voices heard? Has it become easier? Is it still a problem? And how does it affect you?
It's not just about women writing, but it's also about how we read women and how we respond to women's voices. So, to begin with talking about, to begin with what it is to write as a woman. When you start writing as a young woman, your role models, or the role models that are put before you, are all very male. Who are the poets that as a young woman I considered to be excellent poets? Even before Sylvia Plath, I read Ted Hughes. Ted Hughes was in my syllabus, Sylvia Plath was not. So, you had voices like Ted Hughes, you had your Ramanujans and your Ezekiels, and if you look further afield, your Mahmoud Darwish. Right? So the voices that I heard, and in my head also, Baudelaire maybe, and in my head also held up as important voices, and important in terms of style, important historically, important in terms of what they had to say, all tended to be male. And that is how I tried to write. It was only later that perhaps I read Eunice D'Souza, or an Imtiaz Dharkar, or any of our other women, and realized there might be a different way to write. So what is different then, about how women write? And this may not be unique just to women, I think. I recently was reading essays by the British poet and novelist, Jamaican poet and novelist who lives in Britain, Kai Miller. And he wrote about the black male body and how he's writing through the body, how his consciousness is shaped by the body. And I think when you're writing as a woman, in many ways, your consciousness is shaped by the body and what the body does in the space that you are in. And your experience of who you are and what you are as a body is very different as a woman than as a man. You don't occupy as much space as a man does. I mean, think about it, even women's toilets are difficult to find. It's as basic as that. So I think it is the material and it is the material life and the material body that helps shape how you write as a woman, and I think that is what happened to me. And it was slowly as I began to understand the ways in which I occupied space, or was not allowed to occupy space, but learned to occupy space, that shaped how I write.
I have to think about this so much because I didn't come from a literature, stream. I came from a commerce graduation. I came from, studying advertising and marketing. So when I came to literature, I didn't think about how it's gendered, because I didn't get references of male poets or British or American male poets. I just jumped into the deep end of the pool, or the dark side of the ocean. And you're navigating two things. You're learning to read. You're learning to cover ground because you have not read enough. You feel like an illiterate. And you're discovering your voice and worldview at the same time. So you're not sure whether it's a woman's worldview, it's a human's worldview, it's a city dweller's worldview. Whose worldview are you embodying? What are you trying to find around you? Sometimes I feel non-gendered, because some of the times when my gaze is not woman, it's just human. It's just full of pain and compassion. And then it's like, okay, I'm woman. Or when it is about sexuality, then it's woman. Like I move through the crowded lanes and trains, and then my body is touched differently. Then I remember I'm woman. I sometimes don't remember. So life and art move for me simultaneously. I think I was always a gate crasher in some way, without knowing it. After very long, I realized, oh, I'm not that polite person who asks, can I enter? Can I succeed? So I did find a lot of male domination or male dominating in the poetry scenes when I entered. A lot of the male poets, like at the epics of the pyramid. But I never thought of that as a pyramid. I always looked at it as a level playing field. So I think there's something wrong with my perspective. Because even if it was there, the hierarchy, I thought this is so easy to dismantle it. Because I saw all kinds of people, and if you're talking about women who don't have agency, and then they have a transformative journey to get that agency, whatever that might be. It might not even be in poetry. So the same thing replicates itself, and I saw that even in poetry, while it may be male-dominated, nobody stops a woman from writing. Eventually, no one can stop anybody. So you could have gatekeepers, you could have nexuses and camps and silos and schools of thought, but I think a woman is too strong. She's too unstoppable. She's too river-like. She will find her path, and she will gate crash, because she's like that. So eventually, she's going to express, and she will find different ways of expression. And there will always be some intersectionality and outsiderships, and there will always be some obstacles, and there will always be some new minority group that needs to be mainstreamed. And I think the only, the biggest observation I've had as a poet and as a female poet is when I write about the sexuality. When I write about politics, yes, it comes from a nurturing point of view, but it's not so gendered, because it's compassion, and compassion can be with everybody. But yeah, I feel that there is a tilt that's happening towards women taking on agencies of their voice and of their space. And that's what I see, but I do see that there has been a history of invisibilization that women have faced in poetry. Even in India, so many actually poets, women poets, were not heard for the longest period of time. But now they are being unearthed by, and not necessarily only female poets, but they are being unearthed. But this is the day and age of gate crashing.
Very interesting. So two really interesting perspectives that, writing as a woman is essentially writing as a woman in the physicality of a woman and the gaze of a woman, and that gives you a special voice and place. And you're saying you just get crash.
Don't take permissions.
Don't take permissions. So very interesting. Now, going forward, not just from the gender or the way the world is. Now, the whole, I see a lot of shift towards, all of us seem to have read a lot. We keep reading. More books in the house than you can finish reading in your lifetime. But increasingly people are stopping to read. And I'm seeing newer generations are now picking up a book much lesser. So wither poetry in this era of everything being on the phone and seeing quick, not making an effort to consume anything.
Are we breaking it? See, we're breaking rules already. Okay, so I, because I dabble in various streams, from writing scripts for screen, for writing plays for stage, so I think of the audience as, not just a reader, but also a consumer of different kinds of oral or, like visual storytelling. Yes, it concerns me when I'm writing a book that, where are the readers? Are they extinct? Yeah? Are they going to be found in the museum? You'll one day come across, this is the reader. And they had read so many books.
Yeah. This was the reader.
Yeah, this was the reader. Yeah. And the skeleton wouldn't decay, okay? Because it would have so many words in it. But no, I think with time and technology, art changes. You can't, it's never static. And so it will change eventually. And I think as poets, as writers, we will go with the flow of molding it to the zeitgeist, not selling out, not like playing to the gallery, but to accept that technology is going to change this. So maybe, voicing a poem out on Instagram is not a bad idea. As long as it's not written by AI, it's written by you, and it's your poem, whether you animate it or you perform it on stage. Even that, I think there was once a kind of a division between page and stage poetry. I don't know why they made a big fuss about it, and they looked down through their long noses over one form over the other. Yeah, in one zamana, this is. Don't look at me surprised, okay? In one zamana, stage poetry was, I think the only poetry that is bad is undercooked poetry. Like, like that very confident poet who comes, who's not a poet, I call them the unpoets, who come on stage and say, I just wrote this poem. I'm like, then please don't read it. Please. Because if you just filmed a film, you wouldn't have shown it, right? You would have edited it and you would have sat on it. And so respect the reader. We don't want very unedited stuff. So I think that's the only, of course, I'm also searching for the reader. If you find them, just send them in.
I think that's all of them right here. I have a problem with the word consumption, I think, when it comes to literature. I would say that poetry is important even in the age of AI because it deals with the affective. And that is what we are all missing. So no matter what happens, that basic human expression is going to remain important. Yes, we may move with the flow, and like Rochelle said, you'll have poetry on Instagram, you'll have different ways in which poetry is published and read. But I think poetry will remain because at the core of it, it is something that makes us human. And it comes from what makes us human. So I don't think our readers are going to disappear with the age of AI. In fact, more than readers, we might have a proliferation of poets now. Because everyone is dying to express themselves and say what they feel. Because, we are losing that human touch. We are losing that sense of being able to convey to someone else what it is that we are feeling. And I think in that desert of feeling, poetry remains important and is going to be even more important.
Very interesting.
You know, and I just want to build on her thought,
Sure.
is that actually speaking, because in this very rushed and, you know, scroll heavy age, it's that form which allows you to stay quiet, reflective, you know, and so I think no matter how much we get lost in the chaos and the multiplicity of it, that's what we're actually stopping at. So that gives me hope.
So has the form of poetry that you write, of course the readout poetry, but other than that, has the form undergone change, or is there any things that you're thinking about? Both of you, I think, write free verses, but still, it is, I did see echoes of, you said TED Use, and I saw echoes of TED Use in your first couple of poetry. It still sticks to that format of what we see as free verse, but do you see it changing, the length, the way you're expressing yourself, the way we express, etc.? Do you see that changing?
Yes, because I think, like I said, if you write, you write from your body. And if you write from your body, the way that shapes the work that comes out changes with your relation to space, with your relation to time. And I found that when I was younger, I used to write a lot of shorter work. Then that grew, and then you start experimenting a little more, and you want to show off. As you become surer of yourself as a poet, you want to show off with your words. And you want to show off with your wordplay. You want to show off how you can break your line. So you start experimenting with that a little more. And then I think there comes a point when you are even surer of yourself and you say, hell with the line. It doesn't matter what someone says poetry is. You start blending genres. And I think that's probably the stage where I'm at now, where I'm writing a lot more of what you call prose poems. And you don't know where one word flows into the other, where one line flows into the other, and then how that conveys meaning, that changes. I'm not necessarily going after that impressive punchline anymore. Yeah? And I'm going with how the line is going to make it more reflective. How the line is going to help the reader pause and think and pull them deeper into what it is that I'm trying to say. So the way I write has changed with time. And the other experiment that I'm doing now is looking at archival texts. I think there's also an archival turn in poetry internationally, where we are all going back to writing or documents from, say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. We are looking at records. We are looking at other subjects, for want of a better word at the moment. We are looking at other disciplines and texts from other disciplines and trying to write from those. So where I find myself now at is how do I reconcile my researcher self with my poetic self? There's this, I have to scratch my research itch, and I have to scratch my poetic itch. And what happens then when I research and write poetry, not a novel, not nonfiction, but poetry? So what happens then when you have that interaction between what is essentially nonfiction from a different time and your poetic response to that? So the work that I'm doing right now is looking at one of the colonial gazetteers and pulling text from there, the very ethnographic descriptions from the gazetteer, and writing against the grain, taking one character from that community whose life has touched either me or my family, but which is a personal history. So I'm looking at recorded histories, at colonial histories, and then responding to them with the personal, with the local, with the very specific and showing what it is that is silenced in these records. You know, what is it that colonization silences? What is it that any kind of institutionalization silences? And how do we respond to that? So it is also a kind of discovery for me as well. You know, how do you respond to this? How do you humanize? How do you find yourself when you have been written about in these particular ways that box you into identities and into a self that is not necessarily who you recognize as yourself? So the way it is really a quest. You know, when you look at it, it is really, when you're looking at form, it is also a quest of looking for a form for yourself. You know, it's, your words are finding form, but you're also finding a form for yourself.
So I think, this is an age of duality. Like, I think it was always an age of duality, but perhaps in poetry, with technology facing you, you realize that more. Because there's this goldfish attention span that they talk about, and then you think, do I feed them a haiku? And I say feed matlab like a mother bird, okay? Not in a bad way, not in a caterer's way. But like a mother bird, do I feed them a haiku? But I also think this is the duality is the immersiveness. Even if we have goldfish attention spans, what we do like is to be immersed. And when we are immersed, we lose the concept of time. When we transcend, there is nothing like attention spans. Because when you transcend, time elongates. And when time elongates, you can write any poem in that time. So poetry in itself encapsulates the galaxy in a way. And I think it's the Morse code of the universe, because on one page, you cannot tell a novel, you can never tell a screenplay, but you can tell a poem, and it really moves from, I don't know, from here to there, from there to here. So only poetry can do that, but I feel, yes, sometimes you are answering the duality, but the forms were always there. The haiku was always there, the haibun was always there, which is a prose poetry form punctuated with haiku. And one of my favorite forms, actually, because you could be a storyteller and a poet when you're writing a haibun. You write it in the present tense because that creates immediacy. What happens when it's an immediacy-like feeling? You are atmospherically available in that time. And you are the author. Because when you're exactly in the same moment with me, then we are the same. So that's what a prose poem or like a haibun does that to you. But I have started seeing poetry in many places, because when I moved to short stories, I saw that there was poetry even coming into the prose. And when I moved to screenplays, I saw the visual poetry of the medium. Like, for example, the simple thing in when you connect scenes in a screenplay is called transition. And when you have transitions, it's a poetic device. It's visual poetry. Like if you're talking of, let's say, like disco lights, right? And a very chaotic teenagey scene, Gen Z scene of thumping and throbbing lights and dance. And then you move into the slow, arrested traffic lights of another scene, which is still and has stopped. And suddenly those two images are actually haiku for me. Because even though it's cinema and moving, it's still at that time, because they're juxtaposing, let's say, a lot of crowd phenomena, okay, the young, and then suddenly metal, old, tired metal. And I suddenly have started to see that poetry will always be there. No matter what, it's going to exist in small, big, large, maybe even epic poems, and suddenly that attention spans will never function for poetry. It'll never function for anything that's immersive.
Very interesting, really very beautiful and very insightful comments. How are we on time? Okay. Now that you've talked about your process and how you write your poetry, would love to hear from you if you can read a couple of your verses. I have my favorites. Let me see whether you have that matches with what you would like to read. So why don't you start? No, just the two of you, because I don't have any poetry.
I'm going to read the poem called, it's a title poem of this book. It's called On Looking at a Bronze of Shiva and Parvati in Union, or What Parvati Does Not Say. And this poem is a poem that was written because I was angry. I was reading the Kumar Sambhavam, and there's this, there's this point at which, Parvati is hiding and looking at Shiva. She has invited Kama, and, she thinks that in Kama's presence, when Shiva opens his eyes, he will look at her and he'll fall in love with her. But what happens is Shiva burns Kama down, and Parvati is devastated. And this is what Kalidasa writes in Hank Heifetz's translation. Then Parvati, seeing her hopes broken to pieces, as Shiva burned Kama down while she watched, cursed her own beautiful body in her heart, since beauty should carry a lover to success. And that made me angry. And this was my response. You adorn my hair with parijat on your breath, the smell of all the men who have stroked this hair on your breath, the smell of the light in my navel. I turn to you, lift my face to yours, and you need all the mythical strength that held the heaven-fleeing Ganga in your dreadlocks to lift me to your thigh, unseared by my eyes, or the verse does not say. You wait for me to encircle your thighs. The dreaded weight of he who is lord of the cremation grounds, my hands entwined in yours, my hands around your poison blue neck. I hear Ravana roar, my moan, pure sound as my foot crushes Kailash back to earth. As your mouth forms its syllables, you sing creation, make 1,000 fingers, raindrop light, raindrop sharp, raindrop hard. Dance the afternoon light into glass, shattering over the world. I bite your lip, unravel your tongue, probe your navel, weightless dancing, your feet destroy the 3 cities. My nails mark you, the root of your thigh heaving, leaving you touched, lust scorched, night cracking into day, not just your jada. Your dew-moistened, raindrop-fed, river-rushing world will be undone if I do not lift so much as a finger. With an air-etched gesture, I unmake your world. It is my pleasure, Lord of the universe, you wait upon.
See, I forgot the mic. Now you can say, right? That poetry makes you forget. Okay, this one is, okay, I won't give a preamble. I'll just read. It's called Surrender, from my book, Coins and Rivers. If I were a country, you would be a journalist. And because you are not an empty-headed bloke out for a quick fix, but investigative, committed, idealist, I would have shot you down a street and left you to bleed. If I were a country, and you, my journalist, it would have been a civil war, one too many. Revolutions, changes in governments, I would have jailed you and kept you on CCTV. If I were a country, and you, my journalist, I would have played a wait and watch game to see who wears the other, sleep deprived, akin to a Russian sleep experiment. But the more you stare, the more beautiful someone becomes, remember? The more you stare, the more beautiful someone becomes, remember? Many pass the cellars of my mind, few the cellars of my heart. Few the cellars of my heart, I would blink first. I would blink first, I would give in from dictatorship to democracy. If I were a country and you my journalist, I would let you run a free press and media to change the face of an entire nation. So some of my poems do kind of mix between love and violence as themes, and they come from a very personal space because as a child I used to see my parents quibbling constantly, so I always thought there was World War III going to happen. And from that feeling, I think, comes the need to examine violence. And there's a lot of it in the world in any case. And I think love is the only medicine or the only answer to that. So a lot of my themes, not just in poetry, but in many places, overlap in that way.
How many more are we doing, you think? Two more? Two more? One more? Okay. If we are doing one more, then this one. It is called Maybe Fairs Was Wrong. And one of my favorites. And Rochelle was speaking about love and how it is important to love. And I take love in the broader sense. I take love in the sense that Che Guevara talked about love, that love is important for any revolution. It's our love for ourselves and each other, and also love for the world. And those are some of the ideas about love that this particular poem comes from. You all probably know the Faiz poem, Mujhse Pehli Si Mohabbat. Yeah, so this takes from that. The epigraph is from Audre Lorde. But I, who am bound by my mirror as well as my bed, see causes in color as well as in sex, and see her wondering which me will survive these liberations. Maybe Faiz was wrong. You hold tighter in your not holding. You quote Faiz. Mujhse pehli si mohabbat meri mehboob na mang. Do not ask me for that love again, my beloved. Torn between causes, I did not see there was no again. That lust, love, lust was never yours. Mind touch, mind fucked in the X-rayed uranium showered landscape of our nation of the mind. My body was never beautiful to your touch. In the country of cracked feet, breasts lose their song, mind fucked, mind touched. Still looking for their lost sounds, I say you. Maybe Faiz was wrong. Maybe my fingers, tongue, skin on yours, on mine, could touch this barren nation to life. I hear you in Farida Khanam's breath. Teri surat se hai aalam mein baharon ko sabat, teri aankhon ke siva duniya mein rakha kya hai. The beauty of your face turned the season to eternal spring. All else is vain. Your eyes encompass the world, and I know it was never about the beauty of my face or the depth of my eyes. I say Faiz, but you were wrong. Maybe I can still unfuck myself, slip out of my skin, teach myself to touch, be touched again, to call this nation of ours to love and life.
Wonderful. So I was going to read a Badmaash poem, but my mood is so somber because I lost two poet friends this year. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to read about poets. I know. I should have actually felt spunky enough to read the Badmaash poem. But you can read it. Yeah, they're there in the book. It's called Bedding Day. It's all in crazy Angrezi. And it embodies an asshole. And it's very wonderful to have a point of view of an asshole and write a poem, because you can do anything with it then. You don't have to be a linguistic elite, because then you don't need that. There's misogyny already. But I lost two friends, or we lost two poets this year, and the mood is somber, so I'm going to read that. Yeah? I'll give in as a poet very naturally to the mood. This is called Envy. When they die, they get precious. Aga Shahid Ali, Margaret Mascarenhas, Divya Joshi, Jugal Modi. Because their sentences now have full stops, their muses have flown or gone with them to Kashmiri American poet graves or Venezuelan Goan ones. Now their words have the weight of water and earth, sprinkled with burial tears. These fireflies glow without extinguishing in the dark. Permanent stars, roses, thorns. Now nothing can be edited. Everything transient. Temporary are the feelings of ever meeting them. Now they are infused in the shape of clouds. Permanent bookmarks, written in rock, smelted engravings in caves. Now they fit into a frame in the relationship of knowing a person by their biography on Wikipedia, where it won't need updating every single day. Their pictures will be limited. You can only go into the unknown past. Now they have an original, unabridged word count. You can spell their names backward and still reach their graves. You don't have to say, safe flights, safe journeys. They are already home. They are permanently watching you to see if you can overdo their novels, their magnificent ghazals. Can you startle their unblinking torchlit eyes as they keep watching you? Souls of tube lights, souls of lampposts, souls of engines of outstation trains that glide smooth. They have permanent questions. You have temporary anthologies, answers of story collections, book launches going nowhere, festivals. They went into permanent print. You are second and third reruns, reprints. You are still being edited. WIP, hopelessly abandoned, while they have a nice granite bedstead.
We can spend the entire evening listening to some of your poems. You, by the way, did not read one of my favorites, so.
Keyboards, right?
Yes.
You'll find that in the book.
Yes, that's, I think, the first poem, right? We have some time for questions. Anybody wants to ask our panelists any questions?
In some mindful situations, I think that's a very narrow conception of poetry. In my view, every human being is a poet. We don't think prose, we think poetic, every one of us. We don't think complete sentences, subject, predicate, full stop. We never think prose. What goes in the mind, short phrases, sounds, symbols, and some song going on at the back always. The thoughts are poetic. Thoughts are poetry. You guys only put it in the paper, the rest of us don't.
But that's exactly what I said. Poetry is everywhere. That's exactly what I said.
I think I misunderstood. I thought you were saying it comes out of certain set of people.
No, I said even the screenplay has a transition which is poetic.
Then I misunderstood you. In my view, every human being is a poet. The so-called poets have only dumped that onto the paper.
Even misunderstanding is poetry, by the way. It's called dissonant poetry.
Right. And my point is, we all think poetic. That's what I'm
Absolutely.
Today is my falling day.
Thank you for both of you for sharing the poetry and also your insights. I really liked what you said about us writing through our bodies, and whatever expression that comes out of it is because of us being who we are as women, as individuals. But my question is for Rochelle. I know you said something about us being judgmental about the forms of poetry, especially stage and page. Without saying which one is better, of course, we don't want to get into that. But do you think there is a difference between the kind of poetry that should be recited and the kind of poetry should be on the page? And if so, how would you describe and differentiate?
Thank you for this. And that's a very interesting, like a discernment that you have to make. So I feel there are poems or there are even stories which are for the page because there's a certain intimacy and interiority. So the rhythm is in both places. Let's assume we are talking of the best poetry in both cases, not the worst. So the intimacy and also the way a poem affects you. Like, you know, sometimes you're reading language-heavy poetry or poetry that plays with abstraction. That is very difficult to wrap your mind around. It's almost magic realistic. You can't really stage that very well because you might be reading to a very wide audience, okay? And it could be a multilingual audience. They might not get that linguistic rigor or the texture. And then there are poems that are very possible to animate because maybe they have characters in them or they have place, they have settings, they have more of the cinematic or the storytelling, storified elements in them, which help you when you're listening. Because I think there's a difference between reading and listening, right? Reading is when you are in your dark amphitheater, and I'm not talking of that amphitheater there, but your own amphitheater, and you're imagining whatever you wish to. So that's powerful. But when you're listening to poetry on stage, you are distracted by so many other things. The light, the sound, the appearance of a poet, anything and everything. A spilled glass of liquid or bubbly. So many things are distracting your experience of the poem. Whereas on paper, what we are looking at is the space, the colon. And that's why we fuss so much as poets over a semicolon. You know, I mean to say sometimes editors have a hard time because we are like, no, this has to be down here. And this has to be spaced here and all that. Because the space of the page is the stage. And so there is definitely a yes.
Hi, thank you so much for the readings. They were absolutely lovely. I have two slightly personal questions. One that connects to the poem that you just read about the WIP. So does being a poet make you greedy for experience just so that you can write about it later? And then point two, do you still write stuff that's purely for yourself, that you don't edit, that you don't want to present or feed to anybody, for both of you?
Okay, WIP. So I think WIP is more like internally, you know, we are always, how do you say? I think poets and writers don't want to be poets and writers. There is some faculty or vault in them that opens up, you know, and then they are just organically observing and they are becoming like sponges to the world, and then they're inhaling and they're exhaling. I don't think it's a very, no one ever said, I want to be a writer and I want to be a poet and I'm going to write this. We cannot hammer that down. It's such a subconscious thing. So we'll always be WIPs, you know, always evolving actually. And what was the next question?
I was going to say, do you still write?
Yes, yes. Though the personal poems, though I don't publish, they are too natural, they are too raw, and I don't think every poem needs to be published to become a poem. I feel that much at least there should be privilege for a poet, that you publish what you want, okay, win prizes if that matters, but keep those other personal poems which are unpublished. Sometimes I have published the best poems on air only for one person who listened to it while I was blabbering when I'm drunk. And somebody would say, that's a poem. I'm like, that's published on air for you. That's also a poem.
So, works in progress. Everything can be a work in progress, but I think as a writer of any kind, not just a poet, you need to reach a stage where you're going to say, this is where I'm ready to let the work go and let it be in the world. And then it stops, and that doesn't mean it stops being a work in progress, I think. You know, I do think everything is a work in progress in the sense that you will always look back at what you wrote 10 years ago and think, oh, you know, this comma is out of place, or, oh, I could have developed this in a different way. And then there are works that you look back at and you cringe, right? And then there's something that you are very proud of. So yes, you know, a lot of what you write remains work in progress, and it's about when you stop and let it go into the world. About personal and public work. I think all of us tend to have, as writers, tend to have work that is very personal and work that is very public, but I think there's a very fine line between that personal and public when you are writing to be published. if you are going to only publish work that you think is not personal or that does not have the personal in it, it will not have life in it. You know, there has to be a part of yourself in everything that you publish. Because otherwise, why would the reader want to engage with it? Because when I am reading, I'm having a conversation with somebody else. If I cannot have that conversation, why will I read? So yes, there is something of you in everything that you write and then everything that you publish. And then there is work that you keep aside and keep locked away in a trunk, which is somehow something, the deepest, darkest part of you. And you sometimes write something that you don't even want yourself to see. So it's a very difficult line to tread, I think. And even when writing, and even with the work that is very personal, I think it is very difficult, because sometimes you write about things that you don't want to think about. And you force yourself to think through it and write about it. And then it is that struggle, that internal struggle, that makes it a work that is very difficult to bring out into the world. And I think if you have writing that doesn't have the struggle, for me, that writing doesn't have life. That struggle should be there. It's about how we engage with the world and what our struggle is to engage with the world, because that is what we are communicating with the reader. That is what we read because we want to understand other people's struggles. Then we are not alone.
Actually, you answered my question, and I'm a bit scared that you're reading my mind right now. This was the exact
Poets
question.
tend to do that.
Yeah, this was the exact question I wanted to ask you, but then I'll ask to Rochelle. Rochelle.
Without misunderstanding, okay?
Right. When do you think a poem is ready to show to the world? What happens at that moment? Yesterday you didn't show it, published it, day before yesterday, but today I let it go, my baby go. When is it you decide that
So I'll tell you,
the poem is ready to go?
See, there's definitely, what I'll borrow is the line of abandoning your novels, they say that. So do you abandon poems? I feel I don't. I know when my poem is ready, when it's not repeating its imagery or its thought. Unless it's a refrain. When it's a refrain, you have to repeat. But when it's not a refrain, it's a free verse, and you think, okay, now I'm repeating the same imagery and thought, it's time to say, edit lock. Then you can edit it for perfection or imperfection.
Do you have anything to add, Gopika?
As poets, I'm sure you would like to change the world, right? So what is that? How would you go about it? The first thing that comes to mind that you would really like to change right now?
Yeah, like I would like to have 1 lakh copies sold of my poetry book.
How about you, Gopika?
That's a changed world.
It's a personally changed world.
I think with every word that we read and every word that we write, we do change the world.
And every word that is read.
And yeah, absolutely. With every word that we read, with every word that we write, we change the world. In some way, there's another person who's engaging with what we are saying. And that exchange is how the world changes. You know, that this is also, I wear many hats, and one of the hats is that of teacher. This is also why I teach. So to me, it's a continuum. We all strive to change the things that we think need to be changed, that we cannot bear to look at, that we cannot bear happen around us.
Okay.
On a serious note, not a comical note, of 1 lakh copies, which every poet wants, because that means the world is reading poetry. One of the serious ways in which you can change the world through poetry is corrupt the youngest of the minds to write and get contagious about haiku. Once they get hooked to haiku, you know you're going to have a very good future ahead in poetry. Yeah, really. Because they think it's such a small form, they just have to juxtapose images, and they start doing that all the time. And I meet students, 3 years later, and they're like, ma'am, I wrote one haiku, can you just check? I'm like, yes, continue that. Because that's how the world changes. Because that's how the way you see the world, you start seeing it differently.
The way I changed the world is I lost some friends when I wrote poetry. So it's been a really great pleasure to talking to both of you. Really, I also learned a lot from both of you, and very, very happy to see that the river of poetry is in safe hands with you and other people who are writing poetry. So please do pick up these books. Sorry, I'm plugging it. But these two books, this is what Parvati did not say that she read out, and Coins in Rivers. Lot of interesting and lovely, lovely poems in there, which is what I've been fighting with them. They didn't read my favorites. So yes, please do pick it up. And thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Really great to see so many of you interested in poetry. Yay, we are not in the minority, people who like poems. So thank you very much. Have a good evening, and hopefully next 2 days also will be very nice for you.
And we would like to thank you for being such a wonderful moderator, for reading our works, and thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and thank you
Thank
to the
you
audience.
to everybody. Thank
Yes,
you
thank
to
you
all
to
of you.
everybody.
Yeah,
If we
thank
have
you.
so many readers of poetry, we will change the world.
Poetry Zindabad.